European foreign ministers will discuss possible sanctions on Belarus on Friday after protests over Sunday's disputed election entered a fifth night. This was the scene on the streets of Minsk earlier. You can see the protesters marching, some holding flowers. People driving past are beeping their horns in support. Remember, this man, Alexander Lukashenko, has ruled Belarus since 1994. Well, apparently on Sunday he won 80% of the vote. But there have been widespread allegations of vote rigging. This was the main opposition candidate, Svetlana Tikhanovskaya. She ran for president after her husband was arrested. She was then detained while lodging a complaint about the result. She then fled to neighbouring Lithuania. But it's clear the dissatisfaction is spread across the country she's left behind. The Belarusian journalist Hanna Lyubakova has tweeted, "Something has cracked." Unprecedented police brutality and violence was the last straw for many people. Thousands are on the Minsk streets right now, she says, but also other cities and towns. Many major plants have announced strikes, prominent public figures demanding to stop violence. Well, as she says, protests have taken place in the capital, Minsk, and beyond. Police have used live bullets against protesters in the southwestern city of Brest. In the city of Gomel, a man died after being arrested and kept in a police van. That's the second death that we know of. Workers at some state-run companies have downed tools as part of a general strike. Some pictures for you here of workers from the huge state-run Belarus factory. It makes haulage equipment, and they're chanting for Alexander Lukashenko to stand down. Well, since Sunday, more than 6,000 people have been detained by police and security forces. The footage we're about to play from Belarusian state TV is somewhat disturbing. It shows detained protesters being asked if they'll start the revolution again. They say no. Some of them are injured and they do all look scared. The state TV channel has reported that many of those arrested were carrying weapons and foreign passports. These reports haven't been verified. This is the scene outside a prison north of Minsk. Relatives waiting outside detention centres, hoping their loved ones will be released. And some people are showing photos of those they're looking for to people coming out to see if they're perhaps being held in the same cells. Here's what some of the relatives of the detained had to say on Wednesday.
I only managed to tell my husband, the police are coming our way. They came to us and they said to my husband, come with us. He only asked why, and they were already taking him, twisting his arms, taking him to the police van.
We just want to know where our children are. That's all we need. They're not giving them food. This morning some boy said the police beat them up a bit less if they were quiet. There are up to 40 people in the cell. Every half an hour they'd bring them a litre of water, 1.5 litres for all of them.
A little earlier, I spoke with Margarita Maliakova from BBC Monitoring.
Internet wasn't working very properly from 9th of August until about yesterday, when it seemed to resume work. However, there are still problems periodically. But what we see is we see some interesting scenes. For example, policemen are posting their resignation letters, and some of them are posting videos of discarding their uniforms. There was one viral video where a policeman threw his uniform into a rubbish bin. Another one threw it out the window. Someone burned it. And aside from that, prominent figures, singers, athletes, TV presenters, in fact, state TV presenters are also resigning, and on social media they go into the reasons for doing so, and oftentimes they cite violence against protesters as the motive.
So many different sections of society are caught up in this, and on the streets we've been showing our audience some of those pictures of women leading the rallying.
Yes, we've seen that in different cities around the country today and also yesterday. Interestingly, women have been leading this effort, and they are often dressed in white and carrying flowers, and you see other people joining them, doctors, for example, and also drivers driving by and honking in support, bringing flowers to them. It's been a kind of a nationwide protest.
Well, the reports of police brutality on the streets and in prisons have been mounting. Journalists and passers-by have also been caught up in the arrests. Here's how one man released from detention described what happened to him.
I was arrested 2 days ago. I did nothing illegal. They told me to lie on the floor. I did. And they started to beat me. I didn't resist. Then I was beaten in the van as well.
European leaders have been calling for an increase in pressure on the Belarusian government. Here are some of the comments from today.
We are afraid that it might go out of control, it might escalate, and it may lead to lose of many more lives and many more people being attacked by the security forces, many more people detained. Because we see that the government has taken a very hard stance. And the reason for it is that they do not feel that there will be adequate reaction. So this reaction is necessary and we need it very quickly.
It is utterly clear that the brutality and the detention of peaceful protesters and journalists in Belarus isn't acceptable in the Europe of the 21st century. And this is why we have to increase the pressure on those in power there.
I've been talking to Anne Moran, the United Nations Special Rapporteur on the situation of human rights in Belarus. She says there is extreme violence occurring in the country, which is unjustified and unlawful.
I'm very much concerned about reports of torture, ill treatment during the arrests, in detention. In your subject, the conditions of detention were described. The intention of the authorities with such a heavy-handed response to the protests is to make people understand that they should go home and stay home and never again go out in the street unless they want to face arbitrary violence, as we have been witnessing for the past 3-4 days.
You're calling for the violence to stop, and then what should happen? The society is divided, but for the first time ever, I believe the opponents to Mr. Lukashenko's rule are a majority, and they know it, and they want it to be heard, and they want to be heard by their leader, who doesn't seem to be willing to listen to them. That's one problem. He will not be willing to go for a dialogue. However, the society is resilient, and it is eager to oust him, it seems. And the fact that there were no international election observers from the OSCE, the fact that many foreign journalists were not given accreditation to cover the events, means that everything is happening almost behind closed doors, also because of the internet closure. So basically it's a society now fighting against its authoritarian president. And just, if I can just ask you briefly, we've just heard from our BBC monitoring journalist reports of police taking off their uniforms, discarding them, burning them. Does that give you hope if the forces of law and order are deciding that this is not acceptable?
Definitely, it's possibly the only hope is that those who are tasked with fulfilling unlawful orders with abusive violence will just refuse to execute these orders. However, the Belarusian regime is extremely autocratic, and the army and the law enforcement bodies and the KGB are extremely powerful, and it would be a very difficult struggle for anyone trying to go against this rule.
Anne Moran. Well, in the last hour, the Interior Minister in Belarus has issued an apology to those who've been injured during the protests, saying he takes full responsibility. President Lukashenko has also ordered an inquiry into the mass detention of the demonstrators.